we're under attack all day long from distractions, from, our brains playing tricks on us about what things are fulfilling in the moment, going after short hits of dopamine, etc., chasing success and accomplishments at the expense of other things. It's actually an invitation to pause, stop, and define what's most important. And in this case, who and what is most important. That's what gives me the chance to actually set a different course, to make sure that the place that my life is actually heading is the direction that I actually want to end up.
You've got boys, I've got girls. I thought, though, for today's conversation, by the way, how do you pronounce your last name?
Olinger.
John Olinger, St. Augustine,
Thanks
Florida.
for asking. Sometimes, I literally just yesterday had a conversation with a guy I've known for 2 years.
Yeah.
And he was introducing me to somebody else.
He
was saying it wrong. And I was like, hey, since you're meeting a new guy, I just want to tell you.
I love it.
Here's the right way to say
This is it, but he felt so bad. Does anyone ever call you Jono?
Jono or Johnny-O.
Johnny-O.
Or J-O.
Yeah. Do your boys have any nicknames for you?
They're...
Here we go. You got to say it now that you started.
They're at the age where, no, they just call me Poop, because
they go right to that.
They go right. Yeah. They're like directly in that. And I turn around, I'm like, did you say that? But that's their favorite one.
See, when I'm like video messaging a friend, that's when it comes out of my daughters. This like a little bit of like their humor that's like not really appropriate. It's those moments.
Yes.
So now in this case on a podcast, your boys are let me see if I get this right. Was it 10-7-5?
10-8 yesterday.
Because of birthday. 10-8-5?
Yep.
Yeah, great. So we're in the same window of fatherhood, except you've got the little dudes.
Yes.
And I thought this is a different start.
Okay.
I usually don't start this way. Instead of like your bio, tell us about what you've done, tell us about where you've gone. There's a side to our story that's like what's made the man. What is, and of course, none of us arrive, but there's what's made you the man that you are, the dad that you are. And we, for our coaching cohorts, so we have the DadAwesome Accelerators, this 6-week kind of sprint around what have we learned over these almost 8 years of DadAwesome. And we bring that to a group of dads across the country, usually 10 dads at a time. Yep. They all share what we call a 7-minute slice. And so 7 minutes is certainly longer than an elevator ride. So it's not the elevator pitch. It's maybe you've come in for landing, you've just touched down, you're taxiing at a large airport. You got about 7 minutes. And so it's going to be about, I do have my watch on, so about 7 minutes. And so instead of going back and forth, what I'd love to hear is some of your story.
Okay.
And we frame it as mountain, like peak moments and valley moments. So I already know from reading your book and from like knowing, like I know a few of the things that'll come up. Yeah. But instead of the long form story, it's like, no, just hit a few of the high points and the low points. And it's your role as a son. It's your role as a dad. Your role as a son of God. He can hit any angle, but just what are some of the peaks and valleys of your story that's made John, the man and dad who you are today? Would you be open to this experiment?
I'm open to it, man. Let's do it. Let's do it.
If you end a little shorter or if we go far over, I'll give you a little like, okay, we're at the 7-minute mark. We won't put an alarm on today, but your 7-minute slice. Thank you in advance for being willing to share. So
cool,
we'd love
man.
to hear.
Let's do it. So what has made me the man I am today, the dad I am today, goes all the way back to when I was, 8, 9, 10 years old. I remember the conversation I was having in my dad's car, driving north on I-5 in we were going through just south of Portland, area called Wilsonville, and it was the first time he told me that my mom was sick. And we were driving to a track meet, and I was sort of like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean mom's sick?" And he's like, "Oh, well, she has cancer." And so it turned out my mom had breast cancer that was advancing, and it was at the point where she was going to go on heavy chemo. And so they couldn't hide it from me anymore. Yeah. And so the journey that I went on from there was like, okay, I'm this, only child. I was 9, maybe about to turn 10 at that point. And so that journey with her being sick had a huge impact on my life. And my dad was great. He dropped everything to be attentive for her and serve her in the midst of that. Yeah. And in that same time, again, talking about things that were mountains in my life, my best friend lived down the street from me, family of 4 boys. The mom said, all right, we'll just have another boy in the mix. What's a 5th when you already have 4? Wow. And so I was down there all the time. And during that time going down there, Young Life was happening in Salem, where I lived at the time, and the area director for Young Life was this guy named Eric Schofield. Eric Schofield's an awesome guy. At that point, he was just like young guy, no family himself, but we were always around when they were doing their Sunday night gathering. And so on Sunday nights at 7:00, all these high school dudes would roll into my best friend's house. And sure enough, Eric finally is just like, hey, you guys want to come? Yeah. And so I started going to this, they call it campaigners, essentially a Bible study with us as fourth graders going with high school dudes. And this was laying the foundation. It's the same time my mom's sick. And so I'm going through all this process. And then my mom passes away when I'm 11. And, you know, it's naturally like most people do, especially kids, are like, God, why did this happen? What's going on? But unlike most kids, I had this safe place with older dudes to process and cry and figure out what was I feeling and mourn and all this stuff. But it was really foundational to ultimately being this support net for me to then say, all right, I a year later, at a Young Life camp, I said, all right, Jesus, I do want to follow you, and came to that place. So that was foundational of me in a moment where it was both mountain of having this place and valley of going through it with my mom. And in terms of like other stuff that shaped me as I went along, I mean, we don't have time in the 7-minute slice to go into it, but like most people, that trauma, if undealt with, you know, I found my own ways to deal with it. I didn't deal with it in the way that a lot of people like do. I wasn't like ever into drinking or drugs or numbing my pain in that way. The way that I surrounded my heart to try to protect it was I tried to be everybody's best friend and be all things to all people. And even now, you know, 30 years later, I'm still working through the process of unwinding that and realize I don't have to be that and do that to all those people. So go through it. The problem, and we were joking about a different podcast I've been on recently. Like, the problem for me is like, I ended up falling in love with basketball. It ended up being a huge part of the way that I processed my mom's death. I went to this place called The Hoop every single day after school. And that was my dad saying, hey, I'm going to pick you up every day from middle school and I'm going to take you to The Hoop. And I don't know what he did. Like, I'm trying to think, like, what did he do between the hours of 3 and 8 when he'd come back and pick me up? He must have done the work that he was giving up to like flex his life around me. Wow. But he laid down everything to just make sure I had a place. And so I would go to The Hoop every day after school. And the only problem was that I was a basketball player trapped in a runner's body. And if you're watching, I'm still largely looking more like a runner than like a basketball player.
That's funny.
We were joking about our height difference here. You know, I'm 6 feet. I'm not like, but I love basketball, and it was this huge place for me. And so I just kept working and working and working.
Always a point guard?
Shooting guard.
Yeah.
You were asking about names earlier. Like my middle school team nicknamed me Oslinger because at that point I was skinny. I was slanging it from the hip, and that name translated like went from Oslinger to Slinger to all the different names. But so basketball is a huge part of my life, and I could tell that story at a different point. But just to like fast forward to the places where like my life changed in terms of like, so my dad. That part was really foundational of him laying down his life for me and showing what that meant to spend his life on what mattered most, which at that point in his life was to make sure that I was good and taken care of. So if we fast forward, played basketball in high school, ended up playing in college, played overseas for 2 years. But in the midst of that journey, I ended up going on a traveling tour to Israel. Yeah. And so we went to Israel. And it was literally a life-changing trip for me, and not because of the basketball, but that was the trip where I realized like, oh, and it wasn't that I was a good kid. I wasn't like dabbling in a bunch of negative things. Did I have my problems? Yes, but I was a good kid. But I think for a long time that made me feel like that's good enough. And when I went to Israel and we walked the places Jesus walked, and we saw the Bible come to life, and we realized as we stood there in the Sea of Galilee that Jesus' invitation to his disciples was to literally follow, not to just follow in mind. Because, you know, at that point in time, the disciples couldn't be, hey, Jesus, thank you for the invitation. We're going to stay here, but I'm following you as you walk away. And so it changed my life. So I got baptized on that trip in the Jordan River. And so that was super foundational. And then I came back and did another traveling basketball tour with Athletes in Action on the East Coast. And we went through this thing by a pastor named Robert Lewis that was called The Journey to Authentic Manhood. And the 4 pillars of authentic manhood changed my life. And it was just a piece of my education as a man that I didn't get from my dad. It didn't mean my dad was shortchanging me or anything. He didn't have it to give or didn't know how to give it. And so, the idea of rejecting passivity, accepting responsibility, leading courageously, and expecting the greater reward, God's reward, like that changed my life. And because I was really passive and I didn't accept responsibility. And some of those things were, ways that I protected myself as a result of my mom's death. And some of them were just things that nobody had shown me. And because I was more concerned about protecting myself. And so that was a mountain. And then, I had the awesome opportunity to go work at Nike for a bunch of years. And I had plenty of mountains and valleys in there. I read about some of them in the book, but like ultimately, like one of the big valleys was I was on this project that seemed so important. It was going to work on the Olympics, and I so badly wanted to work on the Olympics. And so we just had our 3rd kid, and I'm home for 2 weeks after that. But then I like jump back into work. This is in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but I'm like sprinting on this project that has to get done, and but it's complicated, and you got all these people you're coordinating within Nike, and it's about to shut down because Christmas is coming, all this stuff, but it's like pushing. And we get it over the line, and we're set to because the project was happening the week after we got back from New Year's. And so we leave work. I get to Christmas Eve, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't get my wife a Christmas present. And there was nothing I could do. A meaningful Christmas present. Like I could have gone and found her some trinket. Yeah. But the reality was I hadn't taken the time to think about what would really be meaningful to her, as she just had her 3rd kid and was recovering from that and juggling 3 kids at home. And I'm, at work grinding on this project that is important, but not most important. Yeah. And so that was a valley, and then, and a humbling, and she was gracious, but also really hurt in that process. And so then I get to, a few years later down the line at Nike, and 2020, was for many of us full of valleys, most people full of valleys. And that's what it was for me as well. At that point in time, I was the global brand director for Kobe Bryant. So obviously Kobe Bryant has the tragic accident with his daughter and the other, lovely folks who passed away as well. And so like, I'm in the midst of helping steward that work, and then COVID happens, and then Nike's reorging, and in the midst of that, I get to celebrate Kobe's legacy and lead the work around that, which is a mountaintop in terms of what I came to Nike to do. And then, and we get to the end of that period, and but Nike's still reorging, and I might not have a job anymore. Yeah. And it's really uncertain. And so my wife is just like saying, "Hey, what are we gonna do? Like, should we move east? Have you thought about it? Like, what happens if you lose your job?" And I said, she said, "Are you scared of leaving Nike?" And I said, "No, I'm not scared of leaving Nike. Nike's been, I feel really grateful." Yeah. She said, "Well, what are you scared of?" And I said, "I'm scared of leaving my dad." And as we talked about it, we basically said, all right, well, let's pray for 40 days and see, in the midst of this waiting about what Nike's going to do, like, all right, God, like, how might you move our hearts and whatnot? And like foreshadowing, the journey went totally different than we'd wanted or would expected or hoped or anything. And so five days into it, my dad goes to the grocery store in the morning because he's trying to avoid all the people because Oregon's COVID freaked out and all this stuff. And like, so he's there at 7 a.m. and he slips in the parking lot and ends up with a traumatic brain injury. And that's day 5. And it's like, God, that is not what we saw. That's not how we saw this going. Mm-hmm. But so we keep praying. And in the midst of that, she decides she's going to leave her job. Like, felt like God was really clear, like, hey, step back from that. So she does that. And then we get to day 39 of the prayer journey, and they say, hey, tomorrow you have a meeting about your job. And so on day 40, I join a Zoom room, and my new boss, who's been moved to that job, says, hey, we love you. We got a job for you. It's great. Here's the job. And the job was great, but it wasn't the job that I wanted. And so ultimately it was a take it or leave it thing. And I chose to take the job to be employed, but my dad was still in the hospital. And so when my wife and I finally got to talk that night, when the kids were down, she was like, well, what do you think God said in these 40 days? Yeah. And I said, I feel like God said, I trust you. Yeah. You can choose. Like, wow. You can stay in Oregon, you can go. but it's up to you. And so we felt freedom in that way, but we didn't feel freedom because it was unclear about what was going to happen with my dad.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, like his body and his brain just could not get on the same page. And so he passed away like 20 days later.
Sorry.
Thanks, man. And so when the dust settled, and it's obviously a valley.
Yeah.
When the dust settled, I went to my wife and I said, "Hey, I feel like we need to go move and get closer to your family." And so, and that wasn't Florida where we live now and we're recording right now. Like was not on the radar. That wasn't where we were planning on. If you would ask, that wouldn't have been the spot we had chosen. But the circumstances sort of led us to, and led me specifically to say, "Hey, this is where I think we should go." And so,
wow.
So there's some mountains and valleys.
Yeah, and it's the nature of the 7-minute slice is it's a slice. There's so much more to all those stories, and there's 3 times as many moments of highs that you didn't share. But it truly, I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yeah.
We always honor like the testimony. I mean, the Bible says like by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony we will overcome. Like there's victory attached to like hearing stories of. In this case, men, dads who have trusted God through highs and lows. I had a chat yesterday with a friend talking about transition points, inflection points of like, this is a point in life where you can go play it safe or actually take a jump into, in your case, it's both a career move and a cross the country move and a grief moment of losing your dad and probably grief around a long decade plus at an organization you loved working for.
Yeah.
What would you want to share with, if there's a dad listening, and in fact, just recently we interviewed a dad in Thailand who said it was the same, he was about 40 years old when he made a big time move with his family. For me, we moved down here about 40. My dad moved the whole family from Illinois to Wisconsin when he was about 40. Mm-hmm. But I think there's more dads listening that actually are not open to big change at 40 because of burdens, because of family is not burden, but there's real responsibilities, that's the better word, in that moment, that are not open to making cross-country moves for values. And so this will take us towards the direction of your book, but what would you want to share with that dad listening who's in their upper 30s, lower 40s, that's like, feels a little bit stuck right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so what I didn't share in that up and down or the peaks and the valleys, what I didn't share was there was a moment, I guess it would have been about a year before, actually not that far after I'd left. I'd never connected this before, honestly. Okay. This conversation actually happened several weeks after my wife, I had not got my wife a Christmas present. Yeah. And so I'd finished this project and my boss was like, "Hey, well, what do you want to do next?" Yeah. And I hadn't thought about it because I was like so deep in the work. Mm-hmm. And so I said, "Hey, I need a minute." Yeah. And so I went away for a week, prayed, reflected, what do I really want to do next? And what I realized was that I didn't want to lead projects anymore. I wanted to lead people. And the reason why that revelation was so important was because it was basically the framework for me saying, "Hey, this is what really matters to me going forward." Like, could I keep leading big projects? I could, and I'd been successful with them, and they were happy to have me do that, and I continued to do that. But ultimately, what the longing of my heart was, and in a company like Nike, you don't necessarily get what you want, but you do have the chance to say what you want, and it's your life. But if you don't tell them what you want, they'll just take you wherever they need you. So the role they ultimately moved me into after the reorg was because they knew that I could do it.
Yeah, sure.
They didn't ask me, "Hey, this is what," and they're just like, "Oh, okay, he's led all these. Oh, great. Like, put him into that job, at Nike, that's running. And so put me into running where that's the biggest dog that they need to tame." So I say all that for dads who are like feeling stuck or whatever. The big question is like, what do you want to be true at the end of your life? Mm-hmm. What do you want to be true at the end of the season of the life you're in, or the season of having kids? Like there's a bunch of different ways we could slice it and stack it. But ultimately what gave me confidence, not only in leaning in with the Lord, but then ultimately for us to make that decision, was being really clear about what was most important and what I wanted to be true. And if Nike would have said to me when they reorged, hey, in 6 months, we'll let you get into more of a people job. But them saying to me, we don't know when we're going to, like, it's not a you thing. It's an org thing. We love you.
Sure.
But that was where it was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm at the place now. And again, people approaching that age of 40, whether they know it or not, are give or take some years are the halfway point.
Sure.
And so for me, that was the other big part of my journey of when my dad died, he was 74 and I was 37. And after he'd passed, it was this reflection of like, oh man, if I live as long as him, I'm halfway done.
That's right.
I don't feel like I'm halfway done.
Right.
I don't think I'm halfway done, but I might be. It might be less than that. But it was then the realization of like, oh, okay, well, if I'm halfway done, that means that every year for the rest of my life is going to be between 1% and 2% of the remaining amount of my life.
That's true.
And so that for me was also like, do I want to wait for later to do the things that are most important? Or do I want to say, all right, well, let's lean into this journey and go for it and make some big choices. And the cool part was, for anybody listening, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to quit your job and move across the country. You don't, but the question is, how do you just make sure that where you're at right now, that you're taking steps to truly lead towards the thing that you long for most at the end of your life? If you don't know what that is,
right,
then now's a great time to stop and start to think about that.
Because it's a current that just pulls us onward without clarity of a direction we're headed. And I like that you also have micro examples. So there's the macro that you're talking about, which is like what's going to be like, it's the obituary thinking, right? End of life. But then there's end of summer thinking. I love that you do this as a family. It's like, well, what do we want to be true of our family? What have we accomplished? What relationships have we leaned into? What's true at the end of this summer? Summer 2025. So because you challenged other families with this exercise, I'm assuming you guys did it yourselves. How did it go? What was the direction? What are some examples of things you were hopeful would be true? Because down in Florida, we're at the end of our summer right now. Yeah. Here we go. So the little check-in moment, accountability. Tell us about the exercise and how did it go?
Yeah. So really, it was more between me, my wife, and our oldest son.
Sure.
The youngest. He's out there. The middle, he didn't really care. But my oldest son, I had asked him. We went on a date. A dad date, like right at the start of summer. I said, hey, well, what do you want to be true at the end of the summer that's not true now? And as for him, it was simple. It was like, hey, I want to be a better basketball player at the end of the summer.
Which you were pumped about that.
Yeah, I was great. I was like, yes.
I can lean into this.
But then I'm like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how are you going to do that? And this is where for me as a dad, I want to be really firm and like I tend to be like, oh, well, this is exactly how you have to do it. But I tried as best I could to be like, okay, ask him, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? What are you going to work on? And now that we're into the summer, so literally one of his friends in the neighborhood who has just moved, he came back to the neighborhood the other day and they were playing basketball at the park in our neighborhood. And the friend literally said to him like, Jude, you have gotten so much better at basketball.
Yes.
And it's like, amazing.
That feedback loop was so clear.
Yes. And did he do what I wanted? I wanted him to be able to dribble better with his left hand at the end of the summer.
You quantified. That was your goal. Yeah.
He didn't want to do that. And I had to accept that I wanted him to just do it on his way and his terms right now. And finding the blend between, I think I heard Trent Dilfer talk about it one time, like the dad hat and the coach hat. He wasn't giving me the permission to be the coach.
Yeah.
He wanted me to be the dad and just ask the question. So for him, that's how it worked. The reason why I do the exercise though, and why I do it for myself and why I ask my wife to do it with me and invite friends to do it is because summer's just going, man, right? Like it's 10 weeks really. And next thing, all of a sudden you're at the halfway point and then you're at where we're at right now. And it's like, okay, we're 10 days out and they're going back to school and went away. And what you would see me talk about in the book, if you read the book, would be like, hey, success in the world's eyes is what you accomplish. And so it doesn't mean that things aren't important, but I would argue what we see in the Bible, what we see through experience and what we see through data is that relationships are more important than accomplishments. And so the exercise that we do for the summer is not just, hey, what do you want to accomplish this summer? It's like, hey, who are the most important relationships to you that you want to invest in over the summer? And then what's something that you can do to invest in them? And so for me, what I know that I've been prone to do the last few summers is to just grind at work. And 2 summers ago, it was terrible. I traveled so much because I just left Nike and I had to say yes to all the jobs that came. But it meant that I traveled, I don't know, at least part of 6 or 7 weeks of the 10-week summer. And I knew a year ago that wasn't what I wanted. So I started to fix on that. But then this summer, it was like, okay, how do I make sure I'm home as much as possible? Yeah. And what am I doing to drive connection with my kids? And so, or with my wife. And so my wife and I have things we do to connect, and like date nights. We have a thing called Wine
talk
Nights.
about your 3X. You went from the date night to you tripled the intentional connection with your wife. Can you talk about the?
Yeah, for sure. We went from being in Oregon in COVID with 3 young kids and not getting any time together to then moving to Florida and having, her parents around and close. And so like, oh, we'll watch the kids on a, Friday night and you guys can go on a date. And it was great. But, the problem was we were just dumping all the stuff we had been waiting to talk about, kids' schedules, calendars, things we're frustrated about, whatever. And eventually my wife was like, hey, this isn't working. I'm not enjoying these dates. I'm like, wow, well, we're spending money and we're like, it's not, let's try something different. And so we ultimately said, all right, we're going to do 3 things. We're going to still have a date night, but it's going to be a date. It's going to be focused on, not on the kids, not on the schedule, not on anything, just us being together and connecting. Great. So that's awesome. And we feel so fortunate to have her mom around to lean into that. So that's great. Then we started saying, okay, well, we're going to do a weekly business meeting to talk about all the details, all the stuff that we've been talking about on dates. And it needs to be talked about.
Money schedule,
upcoming trips, big things, hey, birthday parties, whatever. Sure. Like we're going to do that in those meetings. And so we added those to the schedule every week, it's at this time. And then we said, all right, we're going to try this other thing called Wine Wednesday. And I honestly don't remember where the idea came from.
Just own it. It's yours. Now, it doesn't mean that you're whining to each other. No. It means that you're enjoying each other's company.
Yes, and we may not even we may or may not have wine. That's the thing. Some Wednesdays we do, and a lot of Wednesdays we don't. And it's just more time to connect.
It's a posture thing, right?
And it's a protection thing.
Yeah.
It's even today's Tuesday, but tomorrow night, my wife was like, hey, are you cool if I go to dinner with my friend on Wednesday? But it's a Wednesday night. And I looked at her like, it's Wednesday. Like, are we doing Wine Wednesday? And she's like, oh, no. I mean, like at 5.
Yeah, I'll be back for it.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, great. Yep. Go for it. But we know that on Wednesdays, after our kids go down, we're just going to spend time together. And that might be talking about something deeper. That might be watching a show. That might just be chilling. Like, it just depends. But
it's not cleaning the house.
No, and it's also, for us, and for me especially, like, part of the reason why I was like, can we pick one night during the week was because I always felt this pressure to have depth on other nights. Sure. And that's not like code word for like, I'm not talking about sex. Right. Like that's like, I'm talking about literally, I'd be like, oh, I want to know about what's going on in your heart and your life. And what'd you do today? And as a mom, at the end of the day, a lot of times my wife is just like, hey, I'm just tired.
Yeah.
I'm just tired. And so we know on Wednesdays that meant we're going to get some deeper time to connect and have discussion about what's going on in our life. And that there's not pressure. It doesn't mean we won't have a deep conversation on another night, but it just means that we're not left wondering, are we waiting until Friday night on a date to talk about something of significance? Or are we creating space to do it?
Yeah. Well, we've been dancing a little bit around your book. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm holding up the book, Worthy Wins, pointing your life toward what matters most. Congrats on launching this about a month ago, 2 months ago at the time of release. I was hoping you could contextualize in kind of the short form how this book would apply to dads. I'm thinking about the dad dashboard of, am I winning? Am I losing? Is my ladder, here's the other analogy, is the ladder leaning against the wrong building, right? Totally. Or just going after it. Why did you write this? And then why would it matter to a dad?
The reason I wrote the book was because there's a risk that I think every dad faces.
Yeah.
And it is that we would get to the end of our lives and have won at things that didn't actually matter. The proverbial ladder leaning on the wrong building. But I wrote the book because I know that I'm at risk of doing that
for yourself.
And one of the things that's most important, and like when people are like, hey, what did you take away from your 10 years at Nike? There's one thing that I had amazing experience, worked with athletes, all this stuff. But the most important thing that I learned in that process of how to win, because that's what Nike is. Nike is the company about winning.
It stands for it.
Yes.
The name
Nike is the goddess of victory.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. So like you learn how to win when you're Nike. What I realized in the process of how to succeed at Nike was that actually this big truth is that winning is subjective.
Yeah. Define it.
And the only way you can win is if you get extremely clear about what it means to win. Is it possible you could win? I shouldn't say the only way you can, but it's possible, but it's not likely. Mm-hmm. And we're under attack all day long from distractions, from our brains playing tricks on us about what things are fulfilling in the moment, going after short hits of dopamine, et cetera, chasing success and accomplishments at the expense of other things. And so the reason this book applies to dads is because it's actually an invitation to pause. That's why I wrote the book. And whether I'm talking to a dad, or I'm talking to an organization, or I'm talking to myself, I've found that taking a pause to stop and define what's most important, and in this case, who and what is most important, that's what gives me the chance to actually set a different course to make sure that the place that my life is actually heading is the direction that I actually want to end up.
Yes.
Rather than getting to the end of my life and saying, man, I really wish I would have taken a different course. And the truth is, again, we're talking about this, it's not limited to guys in there who are approaching 40 or past 40. It's all people. But the reality is, like for all of us, until you get close to death, whether somebody you love or your own,
that's true.
You're just going on about life. You're just going. And for me, what I hope is that my proximity to death through both first my mom dying and then my dad dying is actually that I could help other people have some of that perspective now, rather than waiting for when the wheels fall off. Mm-hmm. And then looking back, because the time is going, like we talked about, like time, like whether you're at the halfway point, whether you're 20 years old, whether you're 50 years old, like the two truths about time are that it's running out. And that it's uncertain.
Yeah, so true.
And so we might have a day, we might have a year, we might have, I hope I live 60 more years and that I'm kicking at 100.
You will.
Yeah. But I might not. And so the pause is a chance to say, how do I want to use what I have right now to actually make sure that it's leading towards the things that I care about most?
Yeah. So we broke it down. One specific example was a summer defining, the who, and then you add some action to that with the example of tripling your date connection with your wife. We know that good stories have a couple elements, and this is a quote straight out of your book. We need conflict, challenge, and difficulty to help write a great story for our lives. And it goes on, like the idea of great stories have opposition. Mm-hmm. We don't want to watch a movie with no strong
It wouldn't be a movie.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. And the dad life is full of this.
Yes.
Today when we both get home, there will be like, I don't know if I can, like, I don't know how to address this new challenge. How would you encourage the dad who feels, maybe I'm combining the resistance side with the question around just feeling like you're a little bit stuck, or there's just a cycle of busyness that I can't quite get above. You're saying pause. How would you kind of speak into both embracing challenge and resistance and like the pause principle? Would you kind of go into that a little deeper for us?
Yeah. And I think as a dad, as a, somebody who runs a business and, has worked in an organization, like, dude, we're all doing the best we can, right?
That's it. It's
every dad, even a dad who's just surviving, who feels stuck, they're doing the best they can. And that's why the invitation to pause and stop and say, and it's if you read Atomic Habits or Tiny Habits or any things, none of them are saying, hey, start with some huge thing.
Yeah.
They're saying start with something small. And that's the same thing here, but you have to stop and pause and say, okay, if I only have so much time, and in my case, I'd talk about it as T, time, energy, and attention. If I only have so much, who matters most to me that I want to spend it on? And then what's one thing that I can do to help lead towards the thing that matters most of that relationship? And so like, I didn't answer this about the summer, but like one way that I'm trying to be present with my boys, and we were doing this before the summer, but I didn't want to give up on the summer, is, the second that we say, hey, it's time to go upstairs and go to bed, they like immediately say, are we doing 10 minutes of wrestling?
That's the follow-up question. Yes.
And, barring it being like super late, like
it's game on.
It's game on. Like last night it was like 8:40 or something. And I'm like, yes, we're doing 10 minutes of wrestling. And you guys are going to beat up on me for the next 10 minutes. And we set a timer and we do that. But, and not that that's like makes our life, but like, I really want to be connected and present with my boys. And so it's not about, hey, I have to spend every waking hour of the day with them. It's not like quantity of time is not a realistic metric of success because it's insatiable unless you're spending every moment. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that quantity doesn't matter at all. It just means it's not a fair measure. Like like you build relationships by spending time with people, but creating quality moments and creating connection points and saying, how am I going to create quality connection? Like my aim when I get home from work on like pre-summer is like, hey, can I at least spend like 5 minutes with each kid doing something intentionally? And it doesn't usually work as cleanly as that. Yeah, sure. Like it's not. Of course, when I want 5 minutes with one, they all want that 5 minutes, and then when I want 5 minutes with another, none of them want it. But
so true.
But that's the thing is like, what is something you could do in 5 minutes, or could you commit to? I don't know, not everybody needs to do wrestling time. Sure. I did read something that led me to that. I used to think, we're like, let's just like lower the. But I read something.
They sleep well with the energy?
That it's better like getting that last burst, like, and it's not like most nights, honestly, that once the timer goes off,
they calm down.
They calm down pretty quick. And so all to say is like, who are the relationships you care about most? And like, nobody gets married because they want to end up divorced or they want to end up in a bad marriage. Nobody has kids because they want to be a bad dad. Like, and so regardless of where you're at, whether you feel like your life is thriving or not, can you just pause and say, what's one thing that's simple that I could apply into pouring into the relationships with the people that matter the most to me?
Time, energy, attention.
Yeah.
I love that it's so quantifiable with the wrestling example because there's a time, 10 minutes, there's a definite energy required, which as dads of young kids, like the energy piece, we can, even when we're exhausted, bring, like there's lazy dad games where you lay on, when they come near you, you try to grab a leg or a hand. Like there's ways to like, it's real. We're tired from a day. You can still bring your energy to your kids. And then attention means my eyes aren't on a phone. My eyes aren't on something else. My mind's not. You can't multitask with wrestling. You need all your focus.
Totally. And just in general, like one of the things I realized is like, if I bring my phone upstairs, I'm just naturally like magnetized to it. And so like,
pulled.
I'm not bringing it upstairs when we're doing wrestling. I try not to bring it upstairs at all because when I do, and if there's a reason to, of course that's different. Sure. But like, if I don't have a reason to have it close, I don't have it there. Yeah. And so, T is really important. And like from my standpoint, you always hear people say like time is our most valuable resource. And that's not true. Actually, our T is our most valuable resource because we got 24 hours in a day, but we only got so much energy. Even somebody like you who's done all these adventure races and all this stuff, like you run out of energy and you run out of attention, like mental focus, like you run out of that too. You only have so much, whether you subscribe to Cal Newport's like 4 hours of deep work or whatever, like regardless, you don't have infinite. And so like, that's what becomes so important of like, it made me realize, and I talked earlier about the beginning of like wanting to be everything to all people. Like I can't, I can do almost anything, but I can't do everything. And I have to come to a place of accepting that.
Yeah. the concrete examples around Wednesday wine, the business meeting, the date night, the concrete examples around, just even setting goals for the summer, wrestle time, concrete. I know you have a monthly cadence, or at least you did at the time that I kind of heard this or read about this, around the day of the month of your boys' birthdays. Are you still doing that?
We are.
Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah. So again, same thing of life's hard. We're all doing the best we can.
Pulled, yep.
So how do we create one-on-one connection time with our kids?
Yeah.
And it just doesn't happen naturally, right? And so the thing that we have set up is saying, hey, on the date of one of my kids' birthdays, so if they are born on January 2nd, the 2nd of every month, we know that that's a day they're going to get some one-on-one time with either mom or dad. We alternate months. So,
cool.
January it's me, and February it's my wife, and March and we just go back and forth. And because we have the 3 boys, and that doesn't mean it's monumental. Sometimes that's going to the grocery store and getting a little time.
Sure.
It doesn't as much as they would love to be like, oh, can we go to the arcade, or can we go to the batting cages, or and sometimes we do those things.
Sure.
That's a different. We're working on some ways to allow them to work their way into earnings.
Yeah,
and that stuff.
bigger.
But it's just about, again, knowing it's going to be on the calendar. It happens every month.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that we're creating one-on-one connection time with them?
Ice cream is the classic default for us. That's you can, eventually got to innovate and get beyond the ice cream date, but it's fun.
And they're happy and they're grateful.
Share a
and
scoop, share a kid size. It's pretty budget friendly. I wanted to ask, because of the 3 or 4 years that you leading, was it global marketing for Kobe Bryant? Was that, and a lot of time with him.
Yeah.
You're the first person I had a chance to ask. I know he was a girl dad with his whole heart.
Yeah.
And just loved and you had 2 angles. One is just, what did you observe that you think he would want to pass along to DadAwesome, right? Mm-hmm. So a little just observation. But second, how you honored his impact, legacy, life, and I wanted to talk about that for a moment as well.
Yeah. Which one you want to start with?
Let's do just what advice he'd pass on first.
I think, and granted, every circumstance is different, but what I came to appreciate about Kobe and his parenting journey, and the truth is, what you don't think about, or what you don't naturally notice, is, right, he's famous for 4 a.m. workouts. That's one of the things he's famous at. And the reason why he worked out at 4 a.m. is because he did want to see his kids. Mm-hmm. Do you think he really wanted to get up at 4 a.m.? Okay, his persona that gave him an edge, and there's all the stories about him doing workouts when guys are coming in from the club and all that. But the reality was, the reason why he had that cadence of working out that early was because he wanted to be there in the morning when his kids got up and before they went to school. So there was that element of him as a player. And I didn't start working with him until after he retired. So then I got to see the other element, which would be hey, okay, we're going to fly down from Portland to have a meeting. We're going to, we could take a 6:45 flight, land at 9, be at his office by 10. And his president of his company is hey, just so you know, at 2:00, he's done.
Hard stop.
Why? He's got to go to the carpool line. Kobe's got to go to the carpool line? Are you serious? That's where he's going? Yeah. Mm-hmm. He didn't care we were in town. He didn't care what was going on. He didn't he was going to the carpool line. And obviously then he would take Gigi and go to practice and do different things. But did Kobe Bryant need to go to the carpool line? No.
It's a choice.
He could have fully had somebody else go to the carpool line. Yeah. He could have sent his wife. He could have sent a nanny. He could have sent whoever. But because he knew that he wanted to be connected to his daughters, he said, hey, at 2:00, I'm done. I'm going to the carpool line, and I'm going to sit there. And he would sit there for an hour before it opened, and he'd be in his car waiting for it to come out so he could get out of there right away and not have to wait in the line longer. But for me, that was he's committed.
He architected his day around these moments of wake up to leave for school and the pickup. Yeah, I love it.
And he couldn't do pickup, obviously, when he was playing. And so then once he retired, it's
that's mine.
Okay, I'm going to do that.
And even the word agency, ownership, that we have more of that than we give ourselves credit. Like 2 craft ways to insert in with our time, energy, and attention. Those are beautiful examples. And then, just what was the center of his heart? You guys had a chance to share to 1 billion people that watched the film, right? Like, talk just a little bit about the celebration you had a chance to create with Nike.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is where the truth about like winning being subjective is so important, right? When Kobe passed away, everybody, in this giant company, 20,000 people, everybody was moved. And you had plenty of people who had bigger titles than me, ranked higher, that were like, hey, we got to do right by Kobe. We got to do all this stuff. So you had all these cooks in the kitchen, but I was one of the few people in the company that actually had Kobe in their title. And so it was like a very unique, and I felt very honored to get to be the one to help steward that.
Yeah.
And so we came down to it after all the people were throwing all their ideas out. It's like, hold on. We have to get really clear about what success looks like. How are we going to know at the end of this project that it was successful? And that we said, okay, well, what was Kobe spending his life on? And Kobe was spending his life on trying to pass Mamba mentality on to the next generation of athletes, primarily through Gen Z girls. Yeah. It wasn't that he wouldn't work out with guys, but mostly he was coaching his daughter team and leaning into the women's game.
And just to lean in a step, Mamba mentality, explain what that is. Yeah,
Mamba mentality is basically the pursuit of becoming the best version of yourself. Yeah. And it's a long journey.
Yeah.
And he played the long game with that. And so what he wanted to instill this in other people to say, hey, I want to help other people ultimately go on the journey to become the best versions of themselves. And so what we said then, okay, well, we're going to make one slide that goes in every deck, that goes to every person in the company that's doing this, whether they're in China or New York or Paris, because everybody wanted to celebrate him. And the slide basically said, here's the objective of this work. And the objective of this work is to pass Mamba mentality on to the next generation of athletes, beginning with Gen Z girls.
Dialed in, crystal clear.
Yes. And so it was like the slide went in the deck and it said, hey, people in China, people in Paris, people in New York, do whatever you want, but it has to do this.
It has to be this.
And if it doesn't do that, we're not doing it. And so what we had was at the global level where I sat in Oregon, we're basically at the top of the pyramid and saying, hey, you guys then go give it local context and all that. And so the video you're referring to that had 1 billion views in the first week was basically this film that was called Better. Kendrick Lamar did the voiceover on the track, and it's basically this call to action to become better every single day. And that was Kobe's approach to greatness. Like, he knew that there was no way to jump from where you are to where you want to be in one step. Yeah. And that was the journey with Mamba mentality. And ironically, right? Not ironically, like that's what we see with Jesus. Yeah. It's like Jesus' invitation is to come follow him today. Yeah.
As you are.
Take the next step, and then take the next one, and the next one, and the next one. But you can't climb the mountain in a single day.
I mean, this is probably where we'll land today, but taking that challenge alongside of your clarifying where you want to go, because we can't take the next step to being better if we don't know the direction that we're trying to be better. But with our time, our energy, and attention, and with the who have we been gifted to be in our inner circle? Can we just take a step today?
Yeah.
With our time, our energy, our attention to be a step better, and then in the compounding interest nature of just those micro steps. Stealing some practical, like Wine Wednesday could be, right?
Yeah.
It could be very, very simple. Because if you're married, like that, strategizing a tripling of the heart connection, of the connection with our spouse, like, that should be part of our thinking. I wanted to give you a moment for kind of last words. Anything else that you're like, man, for dads, I'd want to offer this or share this or challenge us with this?
Yeah, I think the thing I want to encourage dads on is there's a flexibility to this. Like, I'm prone to want to be really rigid and say it has to be this exactly. Yeah. But like, I'll give an example from the summer. Like, one of the things I said I wanted to do was I wanted to be off work on Fridays. I only wanted to work a half day. So we got to a week in the summer where my kids were in surf camp.
Sure.
And the only time to see them surf was during the middle of the day. And I had to make a choice. Well, am I going to go to surf camp and see them doing this thing they're really enjoying? Or am I going to be off work on Friday afternoon when they're not in surf camp anymore and we're going to hang out and do whatever I think we should do? And so like one of those weeks, it was like, hey, I'm going to work less during the week when I wouldn't normally be popping out to the beach to go see them do surf camp, but I'm going to go spend the 3 hours there to support them.
But you're going to work Friday afternoon.
But I'm going to work Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
And
good example.
Do I like the reality is work? There's work to have to be done. And I do think that there's like, I saw this thing with John Eldridge lately talking about how you can like plan the summer ahead. So there's things I want to do next summer.
Yeah, sure. All right.
I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait until the 2 weeks before summer next year to plan my summer.
Yeah.
I want to start to think about it further in advance. But regardless of what it is, I can say, hey, this is what I want to do, but am I willing to be flexible to meet my kids in the moments that they care about most?
Yeah. Because they're not rigid.
I'm rigid.
Yeah,
they don't care. And I was thinking like, oh guys, I'm home. They're like, all right, cool. Can we play the Switch? Like,
we don't care. You should work longer. Dad.
Like, I want to go to the beach. Like, no, can we play the Switch? Like, no. And the same thing, like I coached a basketball camp. There was a half-day camp one week. Things that like, again, then on Friday that week, I worked a lot more. They were all 3 in the basketball camp. I got time with them there. I poured in. But Friday I needed to work more because I had spent more time in one place. So just being flexible. But because I knew that I want to be successful with them, I'm willing to say, hey, I'm not just going to work my normal work schedule, but I'm also going to be flexible to find the ways that I can connect with them.
That's a good ad. Well, we will send our DadAwesome community to go buy your book. So awesome. Amazon is at the best place.
Amazon, yeah, easiest.
Worthy wins. And that'll be linked in all the show notes. Can you say a short prayer over all of us dads?
Yeah. All right. Heavenly Father, we come to you and we just pause right now, God. We pause to listen and to be aware of your presence. We pause to invite you into our hearts, our minds, our days, Lord. I pray that you would fill each person listening to this, God, with a word of encouragement and a word of opportunity for how they can live out the commands that you've placed upon us to love you and love others. And ultimately, those are the worthy wins right there. So, God, I ask that you'll meet the listener right where they're at in this moment. Be with them today, and we thank you that we have hope in you. In your holy name, amen.